Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. As you guys can see, we're in a shop today. And today we're actually working on the LT4. Yes, that might come as a surprise, but we picked up some parts here recently, and that's going to basically allow us to start working on the top end of the LT4 and start assembling that. Now, I don't know how far we're going to get on today's video, but I do plan on at least finishing both heads so that they are ready to bolt to the block. And you can see right here, we have one of our CNC ported heads from K-Tech. I sent these out, geez, I don't think it was a year ago, but it was probably like 10 months ago that we did send these out. But they did their full port and polish on this thing. You guys can see they ported the intake, they ported the exhaust, and then if you look over here, they did mill in the K-Tech logo, because basically this is what they sell you if you buy a set of heads, LT4 heads, from K-Tech. And so yeah, we have been sitting on these for quite a while just because I was kind of waiting for other stuff to happen. I wanted to get further progress on the Corvette. We've made a lot of progress on that, but it is kind of time to shift focus back to the truck just a little bit. That way we can get some of these parts out of my giant pile over here onto the motor, and then eventually we'll get this thing bolted into the car. But yeah, kind of like I was saying, today's video, we're basically going to be fully assembling these heads. What K-Tech did was they basically ported it, they did a valve job, they checked the valve guides to see if they needed to be replaced, they checked everything, and then they sent us everything back. Now, speaking of springs, I really didn't know which way to go with this thing because the options were super expensive to like relatively cheap. We kind of ended up in the middle on that. And what we have is a set of BTR, Brian Tooley Racing valve springs. Uses the LT4. These are the dual valve springs, so pretty much what we have on the Corvette motor. So dual spring, the titanium retainer, that's over here. We got the titanium stuff. And yeah, so how we ended up with BTR was just due to the fact that Comp Cams has like tripled their price. Their valve springs for these two cylinder heads was just about $1,000. I think it was like $980. I'm like, that's insane. BTR, on the other hand, titanium retainers, dual spring, the same setup you get with Comp Cams, was like $350. So I don't know what happened to Comp Cams. Their LS springs were like $600, something like that. Now they're probably just at that same like $900 mark. But yeah, that is insane for valve springs. So reached out to a lot of friends, put a couple polls out there like, hey, what valve springs would you recommend? I saw everything from PSI to PAC. Comp Cams was not really mentioned a lot, but BTR was mentioned actually quite a lot. So spoke with a couple other guys that I really trust, and they're Corvette guys, and they actually build some of these things. They highly recommend the dual spring kit for the Z06. If you guys can see here, this is BTR part number SK008, so it says a C7 Z06. And yes, this is an Escalade V motor, but it's pretty much the same setup. So, and what BTR sells you is basically an entire kit. So it has the springs, the retainers, the lower mounts, the upper pieces, and then somewhere in here there was a shim for the exhaust. Actually, that's right here. So we're going to put these underneath the lower containers for the exhaust. And then I know this from previous experience, the top, the intake valves are actually made out of titanium. They need a valve cap. And so you're basically going to need these for a C6 Z06, maybe a C6 ZR1. I think that's true, ZR1. And then the LT4, LT5 that came on later. So part number for these is GM part number 193023666. And I rang up K-Tech, and when I bought these, they actually threw a couple more pieces in. One were these lash caps. The second piece was the timing chain, their C5R timing chain. That's already in the block. So yeah, K-Tech was pretty cool about that. They didn't charge me extra shipping because I already had stuff coming back from them. And so they included the timing chain and these lash caps. So yeah, we're basically going to be installing these springs today, getting these cylinder heads ready to bolt on. I could bolt them on. I actually have all the parts for that, but we'll just see how long this video gets. So one thing I did have to order, I needed to order a Gen 5 LT specific valve spring installing tool. Our old trusty LS tool will not work. And just doing a quick look at installing springs on LS versus an LT, the rocker arm pedestals are actually built into the cylinder head, and the LS mount obviously won't work there. So our Gen 5 valve spring install tool looks almost exactly like the LS. It's shaped a little bit different, but this one came from Bluegrass Performance. I'm pretty sure I ordered this from GPI out of Arkansas, Guatney Performance. Actually, that's where my crankshaft came from. We have the L8T crank in the block over there. That came from Guatney as well. And so yeah, so we bought the springs, this tool, also my ARP Gen 5 LT head studs. So yes, we will be studding this motor as well. We're not doing anything crazy like a 1/2 inch conversion, because I think the LT4 is already almost a 1/2 inch or like 12 millimeter, something like that. I know it's bigger than the LS stuff. Also, fun little fact, I actually had some points ordering from them in the past, and I applied that to this order, and I think I saved like $20, something like that. Because when I ordered the crank from GPI, that wasn't a cheap crank, and I got a number of points, and I was able to redeem them for this round of mod. We've got most of the lower shims and seals installed on this head. So as you can see, we've pounded in most of these, and I've saved the last to demonstrate what to do with this. So there is a shim for the exhaust. We've got a spring locator for the intake. We've got a spring locator for the exhaust. Now, FYI guys, the exhaust is a little bit thicker than the intake. So if you do end up having to take these cylinder heads apart later, the thicker shim is going to be the exhaust. The thinner one is going to be the intake. And also there is a shim beneath that locator for the exhaust, so it'll be even taller. So we've got the lower shims installed. We got to go ahead and put our seal in. Basically, you're just going to kind of push it on there a little bit. Grab the second one, push that on there a little bit. And then you're just going to take a 3/8 socket, an 11 millimeter, put it on the end of the seal, pound that down with a rubber mallet. You guys can see that right there. Pound it down until it bottoms out. All right guys, we have gotten the majority of the springs and everything installed. We left this last cylinder so we could cover it. Basically, you put your valves in, put the springs in, put the retainers in on the top. One thing I did learn, these caps, these lash caps, do not go when you start to assemble the spring. This actually sits on top, and then you put the rocker arm tip on top of that. So that's going to be it for this cylinder head. No idea which side of the motor this is going to end up on. It doesn't really matter at this point. But we do have all of the valve springs in. Do have all the retainers. Everything's in like we said. Then you did see us hit it with a rubber mallet just to make sure that everything is set up correctly. Everything's locked in and everything will be, remain tight. So a little bit lesson learned. One thing, I actually modified our new tool a little bit. You guys will see this bearing right here. I actually bought a set of those for our old LS install tool. So I actually took it off. This is our LS spring installer. I just put that on there so that way you have a bearing between that nut and the stud that you're trying to tighten the spring down against. It just basically lightens the load a little bit. So help prevent any, marring or anything, mechanical going wrong there. Having a bearing will help decrease that load. That goes down really good. Then you will see a little bit of grease on the top of everything. That is because I used my grease gun and I put that on the retainers. Now these springs sit at a different height than the LS do, so that's why they're a little offset, because like I said, that's where that spring cap's gonna go. Well, because of that, aligning up the retainers is kind of a pain in the butt, and you want something a little bit sticky that we could put on there. So putting a little bit of grease on the inside of that retainer basically allowed it to stick to the valve. Then I could grab the next one, put a little bit of grease on there, stick that to the other side of the valve, and basically line everything up. And looking at the timestamps on the camera, that took about 6 minutes to get that all done. So, one hole took 6 minutes. The other cylinders probably took double, if not triple that. So, we're finally getting good on the last hole, as they say. So we have one more cylinder head to do. I don't know if we'll do that today or tomorrow, But let's go ahead, get that cylinder head done, that we can go ahead and actually start working on the motor. All right, guys, continuing the LT4 build and pretty much kind of emptying our shelves, getting more parts on the motor. With that in mind, we got another set of parts to go ahead and start the actual work on the motor itself. And what that's going to be is this pal right here. You'll see we have a LT4 head gasket. Part number is 125654622. Picked those up a few months ago. Actually, it's probably been a while. So yeah, those are fairly expensive. That's just a stock LT4 head gasket. We picked up a set of cylinder head dowels. We picked this up from ICT Billet, and there's the part number for that one. And that is just because I wasn't sure what we were going to get back. I think I have like 3 out of the 4, but this was like 16 bucks on Amazon. That was here in a couple days, so we got that. And then you'll see the lifters. I think we've talked about this in the past. It's a set of Johnson lifters. These are the short travel 2126 LSRs. So that's the short travel axle oil ones. We had a set of those in the built 6-liter, and we're actually going to be reusing that same set in the 427. Now, those lifters, I actually bought these a good while ago. One of my friends on Facebook, I'll be honest, I forgot who I bought these from, but he'd had them for sale like 3 years ago. And then, you know, I'd already found a set. And then, like, fast forward a couple years, I was picking up the LT4, and I think I put a post out there, any recommendations on lifters. He popped back up and said, hey, I still have those for sale. So I got a good deal on these. And then the last part is going to be these ARP Head Studs, part number 2344342. And you can see it says small block Chevy LT1 6.2 liter. Now they sell 2 different kits for the Gen 5 LT. One has basically the intake manifold bolts. We're not going to use those because the LT4 has a different bolt location, use different bolts. Then they sell this kit, which is just the cylinder head bolts themselves and not the upper studs. So that is one clarification I do want to give you. And I think it might be the driver's side. One of the bolt holes is shorter. It's weird. I don't know why Chevrolet did that, but yeah, one of the bolts is shorter and it has a different shape. So that ARP kit does have a shorter stud. You want to make sure that ends up in the correct hole. I think it might be the driver's side upper left. That sounds just about right. So make sure you end up putting that shorter stud where it needs to go. Alright guys, you just saw us put the lifters all in. I may have went a little bit overboard on the engine assembly lube by putting it on the roller part of the lifter as well as the body of the lifter, but I wanted something a little bit more stable than engine oil, because the problem with the engine oil is I have no idea how long this engine might sit. It might be 6 months, it might be a year, it might be 2 years. I think the engine assembly lube will have a little bit more longevity than some engine oil. Yes, I could have set the lifters in oil for 24 hours, then thrown them in. But my concern is, like I said, if this sits for a really long time, that all that engine oil will just drip out into the inside of the block and down into the bag or the oil pan, whatever we're going to have when we're done with this thing. So I have cleaned the top of the engine block twice now, especially the mounting surface where you want to put the head on. Here is our LT4 head gasket. You guys can see this is a multi-layer steel gasket. This looks to be just about as good as the LS9. So there's probably like, I don't know, it looks like 6 or 7 layers, maybe something a little bit more than that. The other crucial piece of information you guys need to know. The head gasket says front on it. Learn from me. My LS9 setup, yeah, I had to tear all the way back apart because I put the front on the back and the cooling jackets would not line up. So learn from me and make sure you put the front of the head gasket where it's supposed to go. Where it says front, make sure it's facing the front. I know that might sound very basic, but when you're in the middle of an engine build, you can easily get distracted thinking about every other thing other than the head gasket direction. The other thing you guys should know is with the Johnson lifters, we will not be using the OEM lifter trays, those big plastic pieces. Those don't go in simply because these are the link bar setup. So good to go there. The next thing is put the cylinder head on, and then we will go ahead and start with the studs. So we're just going to go ahead and put a couple studs in here just so that it holds the cylinder head to the block. Obviously it's not tight or anything, and I don't think it's going to fall off, but you never know. Let's not risk it. Let's just go ahead, put a couple studs in here, get everything tightened down. All right guys, you can see we got all of the head studs put in. Basically we just tightened it down by hand, and then I grabbed a 5mm hex bit, put it down in there until it stopped spinning, and just tighten it a little bit, you know, basically hand tight. I wasn't using any big force or anything like that. The next step we got to do is clean all of these washers. They basically just say a clean dry rag and then put it on the stud itself. One thing they've changed between the 1/2-inch kit we used 2 years ago and this LT4 kit, you guys can see there's a serrated edge on one side. That is going to go against the cylinder head, I'm pretty sure, and then the smooth side will go against the nut that we're going to tighten on top of it. So clean each one of these. There will be 16 of them. Clean them serrated side down against the cylinder head. And then for the nuts that we're going to tighten against these washers, we're going to put some ARP assembly lube. They're ultra torque. I bought this a few years ago because we did the LS3, LS9 setup. And basically we're going to put that, I think, on the bottom of the washer. Maybe the threads as well. I don't really recall. We'll have to read the instructions for that, and then we'll go ahead, read the torque sequence, and start to tighten this thing down. All right, guys, we have finished putting in the studs and the bolts and everything. We made sure to take our time to clean off the washer like we showed you earlier, top and bottom. We also cleaned off the bottom of the nuts because there was still some machining oil in there. And we basically wanted to make sure that that's fully clean for the ARP assembly lube to work properly. And then right now we're just doing our initial torque procedure. So it's gonna be 40, 80, and 115. Follow the bolt pattern that's spelled out on the card. And that's pretty much it. So we, I think we got these first two tight. And yeah, that's pretty much gonna be about it. Whew. Alright guys, that is torquing the LT4 head back to our LT4 block using the ARP hardware. Yes, that ARP hardware says LT1, but it's universal between LT1 and LT4. And yeah, that's pretty much going to be about it. I need to redo the same exact thing on this side. And if I sound like I'm out of breath, it's because I was pretty much holding my breath the entire time I was doing that. The last time I did a set of head studs, I basically cost myself an engine. You guys can't see, but right behind you is the broken LS2, so that's why I was kind of holding my breath, being super nervous about this setup, just due to the fact that last time we did this, we didn't have as good as a result. So, half our engine is done. I got to do the other half. I'm going to do that off camera. You guys don't need to see me wrenching a bolt on everything. So yeah, that's pretty much going to be it for this LT4 cylinder head install. I will get the other side installed off camera. If we have any updates, obviously we'll include that in the next update. But yeah, I mean, this really went on relatively smoothly. New gasket, dowels, put the lifters in, bolt the cylinder head down with the ARP studs, and we're pretty much good to go. And kind of like I was saying in a previous video, if I spent a little bit of money, we could bolt some major parts onto the motor. So we picked up the LT4 spring install tool, the valve springs from BTR and the head studs. We got that all from GPI and it came in relatively quickly. Now I could actually go ahead and start put more parts on here, but there's two things I need to get. I need to get an oil pan and I need to wait for our custom supercharger bolt studs to come in. There's a company, I think it's like Griffin Motorsports or something like that. They focus mostly on the 6th gen Camaro, so the ZL1, the 1LE, SS and all that stuff. Well, they're making some reusable ARP bolts that go from the supercharger down into the cylinder head. Because right now, they're torque to yield and you can only use them one time. And I want to say the cost on that kit was like over $100. That Griffin Performance is costing out with a whole set. I think it was going to be like 125 bucks. I did a pre-sale, I just happened to see it. So we will have some custom ARP hardware that we can reuse and bolt the supercharger on and off. That's kind of why I don't want to do it right now. It's because I'm waiting for that, and also for Christmas, I'm getting a more permanent storage solution for this motor. So yeah, I gotta wait a couple more weeks for that. So yeah, if you guys like this video, hit that like button. If you guys want to follow along with this LT4 journey, I don't know when we're gonna install it. These updates will just be kind of here and there and kind of as parts come in. We will continue working on this thing. If you want to see that, hit that subscribe button, turn on your bell notifications. If you guys want to help support the channel, check out all the links down below. We'll try to include some links to the stuff we used today. The springs, the head gasket, the ARP head studs, that LT4 install tool. I know they do sell a version of that on Amazon. I'm pretty sure it's the same one. We'll include all the links for that. Also, make sure you check out our website, BonecrrusherSS.com. We've got merch, we've got used C6 parts, we've got some SS parts, and t-shirts and stickers and all that. Check all that out down below on the website. That's going to be it. Thanks, guys. Have a great one.